What's up? I'm back with another update video. As you can probably see by the hour that this is posted at, it's pretty late. Like I said in the last video, I'm kind of in the trenches right now, so I've been starved for time to try to get stuff, to try to work on stuff and get some videos out. But today I did a little bit of exploring about how I want to actually formulate the endpoints on my HTTP server that clients can hit. Generally, what I was talking about in the last video was I said I'm going to have a mock database that's going to be represented as a CSV file. And then you can interact with the CSV file through through HTTP requests such as GET requests, POST requests, delete requests, etc. So generally, I was thinking you could have a GET request where it hits like a rows endpoint, and the argument you specify in the query is the index of the row which you want to retrieve. It's going to retrieve that row as a JSON object where the keys are the columns and the values are the values in that column. And then, well, I guess you don't necessarily need to base64 encode that. You could just encode that JSON object as raw bytes and then send it back to the client, and then make sure that you specify that the content type is application JSON, and then that way the client should be able to decode it properly. That's something I'm gonna have to look into. But generally the idea is that we're gonna take these rows, retrieve their information in column and column item key value pairs, treat that as a JSON object, and send that back. Conversely, if we want the client to send a POST request or a PUT request where we're sending data to the server that we want to have it store somewhere, it's going to open up the CSV and then write the contents of that JSON object in a coherent way. And I think the coherent way is to use the exact same format where the keys of the JSON object are the columns of the database, and the values are the values that are supposed to go in those columns for that particular row. And then likewise, the delete request would function very similar to the GET request, where you specify an index, but then rather than retrieving data from that index, it deletes that index and updates the CSV, which is essentially the database in this case. And so I know I could do this with pandas, but because I'm doing just simple one-line edits, whether it's retrieving data from a single line, or posting data to a single line, or deleting data from a single line, I'm not sure if I need pandas for that. I know Python has a built-in CSV library, so that is something I've been experimenting with a bit, but honestly, I haven't understood how that library works well enough to get these things implemented. So generally my plan though is I'm going to flesh out a couple of things. First, I need to flesh out what endpoints on my server can get hit to access the database. So obviously I want GET, I want PUT and POST, and I want delete, but I want to consider if there are other ones which I want to expose to the user, because ideally I want to use all of the valid HTTP request types, because that's the whole goal of this project, is to learn the whole breadth of this topic and have the full functionality of HTTP implemented by my server, so that if a client sends any of these requests, we get back a coherent response. So I'm gonna have to see where some of these other request types that I'm not as familiar with fit into the paradigm of having a database, quote unquote, being hosted in the form of a CSV that you can hit with various endpoints. The next thing I need to scope in, and I talked about this in the previous video, is what is the type of data that I'm going to allow to be sent to my server. So am I going to allow just text encoded as raw bytes? Am I going to allow JSON? Am I going to allow base64? Am I going to allow byte streams for stuff like PNGs? What do I want to represent in there? And so generally I think raw text is something that I should accept. I think JSON is really standard for sending any sort of information, I think, especially over HTTP. So definitely JSON, probably raw text, and then probably base64 if I ever want to represent more abstract objects like images. I could accept raw byte streams for certain image types like PNGs or JPEGs, but I think generally it's better just to read that in on the client side, base64 encode it, receive that base64 encoding, and then get back the image object on the server side. Sorry if I'm not speaking as clearly. I'm pretty tired right now, but I committed to myself that I'm going to get these videos out here, and that's what I'm going to do. But generally, I think I'm in a pretty good spot with what I have left to do. I'm starting to realize that for both requests and responses, you can make them really customized and really nuanced if you use a bunch of headers. So I think what I'm going to do is, for the purpose of keeping this project manageable and not have it grow out of control with me trying to handle all these edge cases, what I'm going to spend tomorrow doing is I'm going to decide a couple of things. I'm going to decide what headers am I going to allow, what type of data am I going to allow, what status codes on the server side am I going to support. Basically, I want to restrict the domain of data types, status codes, and headers so that I have a fixed end goal where I say I want to implement these status codes, I want to accept this data, and I want to be able to handle these headers. And everything else, is ancillary to the core functionality that I've defined with those three fields. If I can do that, I think I'll be happy with setting this project down for now. But I also want to make sure that I support enough things that this could function as an actually useful HTTP server. As far as what I'm going to decide to include versus not include, I'm not sure yet, and that's part of what I'm going to have to research tomorrow. But I get the sense that I'm at the point where I need to spend less time writing code and more time deciding how big do I want this project to get, how many things do I want to support, and when do I want to make the call to say, okay, I think I've done enough. I don't need to handle all of these extra edge cases. I don't need to handle all of these, these various flags and stuff that full-fledged libraries like requests or tools like curl support. I've had a lot of fun with this project, but I honestly want to close it out in these next couple of days so I can start on something new. And yeah, that's generally where I'm at. Once I'm done with this project, I'm probably going to just put it on GitHub like the base64 projects for you guys to look at. It's already on GitHub, but I'm a few commits behind. My local branch is ahead of the remote branch, and I haven't committed a couple things yet. Also, I wanted to address some comments I've gotten. So I've gotten a few comments. One said that I should post links to the resources that I'm using as I'm learning and building these projects. I think that's a great idea, and I'm going to start making that a habit in the future, where if I'm reading like a W3 Schools article or if I'm reading documentation for a library, just go ahead and throw those links in the description. I think YouTube does have some restrictions on putting links in the description, so if I can't do that, I will just put in what to Google to look at what I'm looking at. Additionally, some people said that they thought it would be helpful if I made some videos describing the projects I'm working on, so that if you come to one of these recap videos here, you're able to sort of pick up where I'm at and what I'm trying to do, and all these videos linked together in a more coherent way. It's not all just containerized, here's today's update. I think that's a good idea, and I'm going to try to do that. I'll also probably try to organize what I'm doing and update using community posts as well as videos. The issue though is that when I dive into these projects, oftentimes I don't know how far I'm going to go with them. I don't know what the end goal is other than just something hazy like, hey, let's make an HTTP server. I don't know enough about what I'm trying to accomplish to know, I need to do X, Y, and Z. This is the sign that indicates success. This is what I'm aiming for. So for that reason, I think it's difficult to make a broad video that just says, hey, this is project A, this is what I'm trying to do. But I think if I spend some more time on the front end researching what it is I'm trying to implement, I could make one of those videos. And honestly, the process of researching the scope of the project to make one of those videos might make my projects more well defined and make it easier for me to know when I can stop and when I've accomplished what it is that I want to do. Regardless though, that's it for this update video. This is probably going to be the last small update video where I'm just making incremental progress. Tomorrow, I'm really going to hit the ground running and get this stuff squared away. So, yep, definitely going to get some good content out for this weekend. I'm excited. I've got a lot of plans. Want to finish this project, want to decide on what my next project is, decide the scope of that project, and then also make some videos talking about some machine learning stuff, get some educational content out there like I've talked about in the past. But yeah, thank you guys for watching these videos. If you have any comments, please leave them. I'm trying to reply to all of them and trying to implement the requests you guys are making, such as including sources and making general project videos that describe the parameters and the constraints of what I'm currently working on. But yeah, that's it for this recap. I'm gonna go get some sleep, but I'm gonna be back at it tomorrow and I'm gonna have some good progress to report on. Have a good one.